deal with. So, all right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, this is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust regular meeting at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, December 8th, 2021. I'm Chair Keith Bergman, and as our first order of business for this virtual meeting, we will call the roll. The members, Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Michael Lawson.
Present.
And Stephen Crane.
Present.
And Keith Bergman present. All right, so we have all 4 members in attendance. For the benefit of those who are watching with us, I'm gonna go to I just want to point out that we have back-to-back meetings of this of our committee. We are meeting at 4 o'clock on one Zoom link, and then we are meeting at 5 o'clock on a different Zoom link. So we will actually adjourn this meeting and then go and join the other link, which is Zoom link, which is provided by for the Concord Housing Development Corporation. The joint meeting we'll be having with them at 5. So we will be adjourning by 5. And so for those watching on a Zoom link, they can know to switch from one to the other. All right. Next, we have approval of minutes, and I wanted to put on our agenda that there are 2 sets outstanding right now for meetings, fortunately, for which there are video. There's a video recording. One is on October 21st. The other is the November 8th meeting at I think it was 6 o'clock, or maybe it was 6:30. It preceded the Housing Roundtable meeting, and I should mention the Housing Roundtable, which was a joint meeting of several committees. That there's a single set of minutes that's being prepared for those that we'll be able to take advantage of. So if there is a staff person that would be able to review those 2 prior meetings to present a first draft of minutes, that would be great. I'd be happy to prepare. I've not done so yet, but I'd be happy to prepare an outline if that's helpful of the agenda items, and just to refresh my own memory, I'm happy to watch the video. But if there is a staff person that can do that, that would be great. I'd be glad to do a first set or a guideline as well for this meeting. As I say, this is one-time only offer, but I'm happy to have us catch up. And if there is a staff person that I could touch bases with about that, that would be great, Stephen.
Yeah, we have, when we said we'd find somebody to do the minutes, that was when we still had our senior administrative assistant in the TMO who was doing minutes to select board. We do have someone who's kind of a temporary employee who we've expanded the hours to include select board minutes. But I can certainly ask if that was originally who we had kind of identified in finance, but now she's taken on a larger role because she's filling in for Jeremy. So I can talk to her about going back to those recordings and doing some minutes. Okay,
that would be great. And as I say, I'd be happy to give it a first go with I sort of did. I don't want to fess up to having done minutes for over 30 years, but sadly it's true for one reason or another. Not official select board minutes, but usually some of the committees that I was on as a ex officio, and be happy to help out the first time here. So we'll take no action tonight. There's no minutes in front of us to I guess what I would ask though is if, for Stephen, there were sets of minutes that I guess I have draft minutes now, or copies of draft minutes. And I think that the sets from our two meetings in September were prepared, presented, and approved with amendments, but I did not, but I don't have the amended form. So if there's somehow in your files the amended minutes, that would be great. We could take those and then post them to the town website. And I'll take up the first cut at the minutes of the October 21st, November 8th, and now December 8th. Great. Any other comments or all on this? Okay, I want to, I'm going to do a screen share with the next thing. See if it works. Let me find my way back. Okay, next item is the trust fund status, if you will, where the trust fund document has been filed at the registry and the trust fund balance. And I thought it might be helpful as we go through that I just prepared a slide that I can put up, which shows that the trust fund, or a couple of slides here. One, the trust fund document that was approved by our board on November 8th was filed on November 19th at the Registry of Deeds, and with all of our signatures on it. So that document is in place, and that's great. And we appreciate all the effort that was done to get us to that point.
Keith, may I ask, do we have a copy of that presentation just as you're showing us?
You can. I was writing notes to myself for this meeting in the last hour or so, and decided that I might as well share my screen. So no, I guess the answer is no, you don't, but yes, you will.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's just helpful to see, where it's the book and page number and all of that. So it's handy.
Right. Happy to do that. We have been sent the source document itself, and if you read in the very fine print what the book and page reference are, which I had to do to put the.
Okay, now. It's on there already. Yeah. I may have seen it. It's just it was a while ago when I saw it. So thank you.
You bet. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to put up regarding trust fund status is just for us to thank the select board at this meeting for the action that they took on December 6th to unanimously approve a motion that transferred the affordable housing funds, essentially the balance of affordable housing funds from the three articles that have been passed by recent town meetings over the last 3 years. And that the motion, and I wrote this one down and listened to the tape afterward, but what they've done is that they've approved transfer of the oversight of the designated funds to us pursuant to the bylaw as approved at the 2020 town meeting, subject to any funding commitments that may have been made by the select board or town manager prior to that vote. And so it's worth noting, and this was the backup that was in the select board's packet for Monday night from Liz Rust, indicating a couple of things. One is that the unencumbered balance, well, let me back up. We start with $1.5 million as as the total of 3 successive appropriations of $500,000 each at the last 3 town meetings. So of that, $1.5 million that was appropriated, there is an uncommitted balance of $635,000 available for other, new projects, other projects. And the commitments that are referred to, the commitments already made by the select board and town manager are for the projects you see listed through 930 Main Street purchase, assistant purchasing 2 units, the Gero design feasibility, and Emerson Annex preserving 1 unit, and 100 Elm Brook buy down, creating 1 unit. So those are the and the idea is that even in the case where the funds have not been expended, the select board did not retain those balances for them to pay out when the bills come due, but rather that responsibility has been transferred to the trust fund, where we're honoring the commitment that the select board made in approving a project. And in the case where there's a balance still to be paid out, that action would come before us to do. So that's my understanding of what our situation is, and that was a unanimous vote of the select board to do that on Monday night. So we're appreciative of having all of these steps taken. Any comments or questions about this?
I think I've been copied on some correspondence between Kerry LaFleur, our CFO, and Liz Rustin. So I think they've worked out the exact amount. And I don't know if there was a tweaking to the amount, but we will get an exact amount to work with. But I think there was some follow-up correspondence there.
Great. That's great. Thanks very much. The next item I have on the agenda is.
Keith,
I'm sorry. Yeah, Linda.
If I may just interject, apropos the budget, last night at the CPC meeting, since I'm the select board liaison to CPC, there were several questions in discussion of the Assabet River Bluff project application before the CPC, and Lee Smith, Liz Russ, and Marcia Rasmussen were all there to answer those questions. The questions basically clarified that project is land acquisition, that should the deal be consummated with additional funds towards that project, the question arose, where would the funds go? And Lee Smith said that the funds would be directed, and there was concurrence, I think, by Liz Russ and Marcia Rasmussen, that should they be awarded, the funds would be directed to the trust, because there would be other funds that the trust and other pieces would be put together in order to then award it to the Concord Housing Development Corporation. Would be the likely recipient. So there's a sort of a chain of events there, and at least that's the response that was given to the CPC. 2 members of the CPC recount. So then what grew out of that was a request for us to meet with the CPC, hopefully at their next meeting, although I did say if not possible at their next meeting, which is on the 20th, I believe, it would be the meeting after that, which would be January 4th. And the purpose for that was to better understand what our role was and how we would be interacting with CPC. And I indicated that the process of meeting with the stakeholder groups, specifically the housing groups, and likely to include the CPC, was just now getting off the ground. And so that, that was going to happen anyway. But they specifically, because of the timing of their projects and how they're reviewing them right now, requested us for that meeting sooner rather than later. The other piece I would just say about that is that John Kratzley then provided some history, a little bit of history, talking about when the study group, and Keith, I think it was you who met with John Kratzley when he was then chair of the CPC, talking about a potential interaction between the two. Now, I think that original concept did not get included in our bylaw, but he at least said, oh, well, we've already had an initial discussion, but they needed to be updated. So I think I've captured what happened there last night.
Very good. Thanks, Linda. Mike?
Thanks, Linda. Just a question, and just this is my ignorance. If money is going to be appropriated by town meeting, and my understanding of what you said was that those funds would come to the trust. Is that what I understood you to say?
I think that's how it was left last night in terms of how people were thinking about it. Yes.
Well, I think we need to be somewhat careful because of my understanding of that project is it's a combination of housing and open space. And it may be the case that not all of the units that wind up actually being there when we get to an RFP and to a developer, all of them might not be affordable units. And I don't know what authority the trust has to disperse funds for open space or non-affordable housing. So I'm not sure, that's just my ignorance talking, but
no,
I see money come to us that we didn't have the authority to spend.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And at least last night, the parallel example that was given was how CHCD even managed the Christopher Heights Junction Village project, which included both housing, not all of which was affordable housing, right? Some of it's market.
No, it's all affordable.
Yeah, by Concord definition of affordable, but not necessarily CPC funds affordable. And so we, right or wrong, that was the example given of a model that had, which is why they were talking about it in those terms. But I think you raise a really interesting point, whether or not it had been done correctly the first time around or not.
If I may, Keith, I think so. I unfortunately missed that. I think we had something else during the CPC meeting, but I think the Christopher Heights example, because there was that deed restriction for affordability and a requirement for open space, and it was given over to the town, I believe, by the Commonwealth.
Yes.
As a part of a land swap, there's limits to the corollary there. In the case of Uplands, Old Assabet Bluff, which I'd been really trying to get called Dorsal Village because it looks like the shape of a dorsal fin, that it didn't stick. There's internally, we've been town staff have been engaged with CHDC, as well as some open space advocates who have been involved in the discussion. And what we're really trying to do is facilitate a conversation between open space advocates and affordable housing advocates to kind of define what the site would look like. And there's a line in terms of acreage or amount of land between open space and housing. And the idea is, as we zero in on that, where that line is going to end up, the cost of the housing portion of the land will be on a separate track for I don't say fundraising, but for fund acquisition, than the funds for the open space, which I think are going to be predominantly privately raised. And so combination of those two things will go into some vehicle that'll turn into an offer to purchase amounting to the amount that the property owners want. But there's definitely two simultaneous tracks happening. So when they say funds from the Affordable Housing Trust going to open space, that will be a part of the equation as I understand it, as we sit here now. There will be open space advocates funding the open space portion and housing entities, including the trust, funding the the real estate, the housing component.
Yes, Stephen, I understand, but still it could be the case that some of the units that wind up being housing are not affordable.
No, that is true. And I think that's, I think that where that line ends up, you have the line between the open space and affordable and the housing, just setting aside affordable, then you'll subdivide the housing into affordable market rate. And if the town is the acquirer of the parcel, or CHTC is the acquires the parcel, how much, how the development takes shape and gets, if they end up splitting off some for a developer. I mean, I think it's the short answer, the long and short of it is, I think there will be a sequestration of funds intended for affordable units that go with the affordable units. And then there'll be funds that are market rate. But I think that we may not know for a while what that looks like. I think the idea is acquire it because of the timing and then, develop the project.
But I think the fund my point is simply that the fund should be held by the town and not the trust until we've got a clear understanding of how the funds are going to be divided up. And then they can be put in appropriate buckets and then dispersed as things happen. But I think we just don't want to get those funds put in a part of the town that's restricted in terms of its use until and we might not know that until after town meeting.
That's right. I think that's an excellent point. We're moving in the right direction when you talk about sequestration of the funds. And Lee Smith did begin to speak to that, maybe not necessarily in those terms. So, and I think I'm now recalling that in the end, a couple times Lee said, I'm having to have to think about this off the top of my head to a certain degree, and clearly, we'll have to think this through. But there was included in that discussion was, dividing that property in such a way that the conservation restriction part of it would be clear, that the affordable housing part would be clear, and that if it meant, as Stephen's suggesting, defining a certain portion that the developer could buy for the market rate units. But as you point out, Mike, that will not likely be known till well after town meeting. Mm-hmm. So people did recognize in the room that an MOU, which is typically executed right after town meeting, should this project be approved, usually has, many of these details in it. So
yeah, and it seems like whenever the property closes is the time for the disbursement of funds, and I'm not so sure that any of the CPC funds ever need to wind up in the Affordable Housing Trust. If they can go directly from, at closing, the CPC funds could go to the
Property owner.
It would be an idea. They go to the property owner through the deal, and that if this board should also approve funding from our resources, that it would then go from our fund to the property owner at the time of sale. But we can get into all of those things there, and in fact, I'm sure this will be we'll spend some time at our 5 o'clock meeting with the CHDC, just having them talk to us about this project.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you. And I did want to respond as well that I think that it would be I think it would be great for there to be, we're reaching out to other sort of jumping ahead to the what appears as item 6 here on our agenda, developing proposed Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Guidelines and scheduling joint meetings. But I'm happy to have us get together with the CPC. They have an issue that they'd like to discuss regarding a specific application that's in front of them. I think there are some broader issues for us to discuss at a couple of levels. Love to have their input on what they see. We're looking at adopted town goals regarding housing, and one set of those goals are theirs, and we'd like their input on what our guidelines should be, just as we're reaching out to Housing Authority and Housing Foundation and the Housing Development Corporation. So it'd be great I think for us to meet with the CPC. The broader issue, and this would be also one that would be very handy to have in our guidelines, is how do we handle applications? The CPC has a long and established process for applications. They have written procedures. One of the things that I talked about with John Cratsley when he was chair was maybe we have a single point of entry where funding applications are submitted, so that typically or rather so that if some entity is going to multiple sources for funding, the other sources in town, CPC and us, it'd be nice if we each knew what the housing applications were that were coming to the other, or that there was some kind of coordination with that. And I think that would be very helpful in establishing those kinds of, guidelines in the future, so that we don't have, the applicants just, and of course, the timing is one of the issues too, for that, where the CPC, from my understanding, tends to be on an annual basis, and they've already invited applications for next year's funding town meeting, that they're reviewing those now, and that the money would only become available if and when town meeting approves it. Whereas theoretically, our housing trust could be on a much quicker time frame where that makes sense, where if someone came to us and all they needed was some balance that we were able to approve from the funds that the select board have transferred to us, then we could act quickly to give that approval. I'm a little I'm perplexed on just how and when we would act quickly on a matter that the town meeting won't be deciding until months from now. And whether it's for this application or whatever, I think we'll want to understand how the timeline works. Do we set up an application process? Is it going to be on first come, first served basis? Hope not. Or will we, through our guidelines, have indicated what our priorities are, based on our conversation and input from the other housing stakeholders and the town goals. So I think that we would gain a lot from having a joint meeting with the CPC and discussing a number of items. So I hope that we can find a time to do that, and happily so.
So Keith, if I can, I think, because I've been thinking about this, and we talked early on about what role would the trust play in financing projects? And, I think we talked about gap funding, seed money, last mile, type funding. Like it would depend on the project. But I also think it depends on the revenue stream for the trust. And Linda, I think we've heard from both our state representative and our state senator about the status of our home rule petitions that are intended to generate, some of which are intended to generate that source of revenue. And I don't know if you'd care to characterize the, assessment of the likelihood of those being approved in a time that would generate revenue in the short term for the trust, but nothing I heard led me to believe that those revenue sources were going to be forthcoming, soon. I don't know if you agree with that assessment, but I would.
I think that's generally what we heard, although there was at least some encouragement, a little more encouragement for the building permit surcharge. But in general, I think, there's a lot of statewide efforts and it's going to take more time.
I think so. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I just have a quick question about that, Linda. And I'm just recalling to another home rule petition that we had before the legislature. It was the senior means tested tax relief one. If the legislature doesn't act on it during a legislative session, don't we have to resubmit the home rule petition?
Yeah, so the activity on all of this, whether we think they're going to move, likely to move or not, the front on this has to be in January, because if they're not, we were told that if they're not pulled out of committee by early February, then for this 2-year session, they're done. And then some of them will need to be refiled. And
So-
some will probably no.
So we need, you as a member of the select board are going to need to prepare for that possibility by having these warrant articles as part of the warrant for the 22 annual town meeting.
Well, it's 4 years, I believe. I think we learned that they have kind of a whole, that they are good for 4 years where they don't need to be reintroduced. So, but we have some that are maybe coming up against that. But I think we learned that they basically get held by the legislature. I don't mean held like not moved. I mean they are retained by the legislature for 4 years.
Well, it wasn't the case for the tax relief one. We were told by Senator Barrett that we had to
Refile.
resubmit it. We took it back to a town meeting.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was about, because I think it was changed. I think the language was changed and it was, but I mean, it's 6.5. I think the point I was getting at was if this trust is going to be involved as a funding mechanism only based on an annual appropriation from town meeting, to me, and I'm obviously not going to be here to decide one way or the other, but to me that would drive the philosophy or guideline, if you will, Keith, about how do we view our role and where is the appropriate place to plug in. I think CPC funds, like affordable housing trust funds, all go through the town treasury. So at the end, there's no like CPC funds come into the deal from over here and AHG stuff comes in from over. It all gets blended and basically in the treasury and gets expended that way.
Right. I don't disagree, because we're here as an affordable housing trust as part of a package of proposals that were, envisioned by prior town meetings and other committees that said, that I was just looking back at the Affordable Housing Funding Committee report from 2018 and 2019, and their vision was sort of, well, if X amount of housing is going to be built, that you want to make sure that 10% of that is affordable, and then figure out where the affordability is going to come from. Is it going to come from the town adding 10 affordable units each year through financial assistance from this group, assuming we had all of these revenue sources? Would it come from zoning by requiring the developers to produce them, or what's the overall strategy? and then came up with a funding plan that had a significant amount of money. The high end estimate was that it would be millions of dollars that would be available per year. If only $500,000 is available per year, that sort of describes a different, unless we are only to approve part of one project in 1 year and then adjourn for the year and come back the next year, we might want to take a look at what are the priorities. I think it's a real question. What are the priorities and guide that should be in our guidelines if we only have $500,000 a year? Because if we're a tail wagging, the tail wagging another dog, maybe someone, if they need big money, they shouldn't come here. They should go somewhere else, for starters, especially if they're going to the CPC for large funding in the first place. So those are some of the challenges I think we face in the short term. I want to try to looking at. We've got 20 minutes left in this meeting. I would like to just officially run through the agenda items we have. Item 4 was requested by Linda, Concord Housing News, and I didn't know if you had anything particular that we haven't discussed already that.
Well, first of all, did all of you get copies of it? Because if not, you really, we need to make sure that our membership is on their mailing list. And then the only reason I brought it to our attention, 2 reasons. One is that they have in print each time a list of the housing groups in a nutshell, and we were not included in the new lineup. And so we need to develop a paragraph that would be given to them. They're aware of it, that we need to do that. So that was one reason I mentioned it. And then the second item related to this is that the Frank Feely, or Rich Feely, known, is current president of the Housing Foundation, and he submitted volunteer cards both for our committee, our trust, and the CHCD. I did have a opportunity to talk with him recently about that, and his conclusion was that he felt he would more likely want to join the CHCD. I didn't dissuade him. It's just the conclusion he came to after talking about what's going on.
Okay, good. I appreciate your on the latter point, and just for the benefit of anyone watching at home or wherever, we are a 5-member board, which has 4 members currently, and so we need a 5th member. And if we were ever to find that there were even more than 1 person who's interested in being here, if there were 3, let's say, we might even be moved to ask that the select board increase the membership of this board from the statutory minimum of 5 to our bylaw maximum of 7. But in any event, if anyone is we're happy to put the word out that there is the need to fill a position on our board.
Keith, I would just add, thank you for mentioning that. I would just add that on the select board's ongoing agenda, they now are posting vacancies that on boards and committees, and this committee has been listed on the most recent ones. And I think we're particularly looking for someone who has legal, financial, real estate and or housing, although I think we're well represented with housing, but those would be the categories where expertise and background would be helpful.
That's great. Thanks, Linda. And thanks for bringing to attention the Concord Housing News. Rich Feely had reached out to me inviting that we submit a paragraph, and I sent him something, and that I sort of pulled off of the statement that the select board had approved, and which appears on our web page at the town website. And I know Rich did take that. He did a little bit of editing, but I think we're now up and listed on his foundation's website, and we will be included in future editions of the Concord Housing News, because we hope that we'll be making some. So,
If you can put that paragraph in the minutes, that would be great
sure, I'd be happy to do that.
for us to see. Yeah.
Thank you. And let's see, the next item is potential articles that we may want to submit for the 2022 annual town meeting. And I know the deadline is sometime in February for submission and I know there's a particular deadline by which draft all town entities are to have their draft articles to the select board's office. I think that's in mid-January. So I think it would be important for us to start a conversation tonight, but then if we meet again, which looks like we will, that we could sort of finalize what the request would be. And Mike, I think you had wanted to discuss this, or did you have any particular thoughts about this agenda item?
No, not particularly. I think we just needed to be careful that the warrant's only open for a certain amount of time, and we want to make sure that we've thought through what's ahead for us and whether or not we're going to need to submit a potential warrant. Not sure.
I think one of the questions that we should get some clearance from the select board is on who submits the presuming that we're going to ask that we need it, and I think we do, at least $500,000. Who's going to submit that request, that article? Was that going to would this board recommend that the select board submit the article and if so, we could vote to do that?
Yes, the last articles have been select board articles, and I don't see any reason to.
And maybe what we'd want to do is just to request that the select board submit an article to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then without identifying, to the extent that we can, without identifying what the dollar amount is, or to say, or of at least $500,000. I know there was this, don't quite recall how that's been handled in the past.
Well, the select board had sort of been on record, and Linda, you can, if I get my facts screwed up here, but select board has sort of been on record that they were going to support an annual allocation of free cash for affordable housing until the home rule petitions were enacted by the legislature. And that was the intent. And it was sort of to get this process started, to get the trust organized, and then the hope that the legislature would pass these home rule petitions. So I think it would be a perfectly good thing for the trust to do is to go to the select board and request that, again, this year they continue that practice of putting a $500,000 warrant article for free cash to be held by the trust. That would be my perspective on that.
Okay.
I think that it's possible that there will be a hard push to allocate free cash instead to the middle school debt stabilization fund. And so I would advise members of the trust to monitor the discussions at the finance committee and elsewhere, because I don't think we want to be in a situation where it's perceived as competitive, middle school debt stabilization versus affordable housing, because both things are important to do. But I just based on based on things that I've seen and some assumptions that I'm making, that scenario could play out. So I would just advise that we try and stay ahead of that. So, or just see if there's a middle path.
Maybe engage in a dialogue or with the select board on what would be an acceptable appropriation amount. I mean, from our perspective, where, whether it comes from free cash or elsewhere is, I think what we would want to do is recommend, or I hope what we'd want to do is recommend that we get at least $500,000 in funding, and then ask, the powers that be to help us figure out where is that going to come from. And I just don't know what the menu of potential places are. I mean, in some cases, and I'm just looking back at my experience in other towns where there were mitigation amounts paid for particular developments paid into a fund. There were inclusionary zoning sums that were paid into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that it all didn't come from. And in fact, in some cases, it came from the Community Preservation Committee, an annual appropriation into the trust fund. So there are any number of places where the money might come from. Mike?
Keith, I think you've hit on a very important point for the trust, because as Linda indicated in her update on the home rule petitions, it's not clear at all that these sources of fundings are going to materialize. And I think one of the things that this committee should be doing is exploring other ways for the trust to be able to gather funds to support affordable housing. You've mentioned a few just in your remarks, but I think the town, through Envision Concord 2030, has made it clear that affordable housing is an important goal for the town. And Stephen, your information about other demands of our free cash this year, given the middle school project, I think are really important for us to think about. Yet again, affordable housing still is an important goal for the town. So I would hope we would begin to get on our agenda ways of thinking about exploring other avenues of funds.
I agree.
I as well. I think it would be a useful discussion, because in the final analysis, we don't want to compete with, to the extent that free cash is a finite resource and that there are other purposes for which it could be put. We don't want to compete with that. With other potential users of it. We want to raise awareness about what our need is, and then look for ways to fund it, which are maybe outside the box of what.
For example, one that you just raised, the CPC funding has required appropriations for housing on an annual basis, and if they don't have an application for affordable housing, they can kind of keep it in their bank. Mm-hmm. But with the trust now up and available, anytime there isn't an application that would meet their affordable housing requirements, the funds could be transferred to the housing trust, and we could hold those funds so that we could act on things more quickly than waiting for the next appropriation of CPC. So that's an example of another source of annual money that might be able to come our way, although I suspect it would be relatively small.
They do it for the RHSO. So it could be there's some money annually for the RHSO and there's some money annually for the AHT.
So yeah, we'd certainly welcome a discussion with CPC about that. And
well, that's something we could raise when we meet with them in January.
Very good. Thank you. So we will have at a future meeting between now and the time that we're reaching deadlines for town meeting, getting information to the select board for town meeting, we'll we'll have this item on again to discuss what action we want to take and how we want to frame our request to the select board to help us fund another year of our operation. Great.
And Keith, I just heard Mike also suggesting a second agenda item, which specifically looked at other ways to fund the trust as an additional agenda.
Yes, look at other ways, which could be, and part of it was the menu. Yes, CPC could be some of it. Mitigation payments.
Sure.
In lieu of producing affordable units, especially if there's proposed zoning amendments that are being brought forward to.
I just wanted to capture it.
To encourage more multifamily housing. That maybe there would be ways to if appropriate, that there could be encouraged payments in lieu of to the trust. That's a much bigger discussion, but it's definitely one that we ought to be a part of. Okay, great. So to be looking at a number of potential other funding sources. Okay, we have 6 minutes left, and I've got there are 2 items on the agenda remaining. One is developing proposed guidelines for us in scheduling joint meetings. Should say one of those joint meetings is going to take place at 5 o'clock at another Zoom link with the CHDC. Rich Feely told me that his board is actually, I think they're meeting today, having a monthly meeting today, but will get us some potential dates that work for them to have a joint meeting. And I sent out a doodle poll, which I don't think I heard back from Linda yet, but there is a poll that went out to our members and the members of the Housing Authority, and heard back. I think seven have responded to that, and we're looking to choose a time that might work to schedule a joint meeting for sometime next week, if that works. Next Thursday. It was a date that didn't seem to work for Mike, and so I don't think it would work, because I want us to make sure we have a quorum.
Keith, do you mind telling me when that went out? Because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that was
last week, or
no, it was either yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, no, I didn't receive it.
Yeah. So I will resend that to Linda. Things that go to multiple recipients can get stuck in spam filters, which happens to me a lot. So I will resend to Linda. Let's see. And I think that's and public comment was the last item that I want to get to before adjournment. But are there but on the matter of developing proposed guidelines, is there any more? We're about to go into another meeting where we're going to be discussing this in some detail, but with the Housing Development Corporation. But I just wanted to mention that we are in the process of scheduling joint meetings. And we will include CPC as well. And
Mike, are you available on the 20th if CPC wants to meet on the 20th?
I am.
Okay.
Are the 3 of you? I unfortunately have a commitment at 5. Are the 3 of you gonna? I don't want to. I'd hate to have it not be a quorum for the joint meeting, but I'd have to move some things around to be able to do that.
Yeah, I have
Will be-
Linda's
I think that we'll
email
have-
on this as the 21st. The email that you just sent, Linda, says the 21st.
21st, okay.
The 21st is, I'm tied up in the morning. I'm free in the afternoon.
It would be the evening at 7.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
and
unless-
I could do that, and I guess what I would ask is that be happy to have us be at a joint meeting with the CPC, but I would like to be able to discuss more than the one issue that they are asking for, since we have more than one thing to talk with them about. And if they can do that on the 21st, great. And if they need more time, then maybe we pick a January meeting, but I wouldn't want to have to go to 2 meetings.
And the last thing I'll say is there'll be an interim town manager I would expect in the next week or so. And so I'll probably defer to the interim in terms of attendance or participation in the task force or, the trust.
Trustee.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn? Would the motion to adjourn be in order, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, let me just see, is there, it's just the 4 of us, so is there public comment? No, there
Somebody
is
dropped
not.
somebody dropped off.
And Stephen, let me thank you for your service and call upon you to make the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
We have a motion by Stephen, second by Linda. All those in favor, I'll call roll. Linda,
aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
and Keith. Aye. So we are adjourned, and we are going to another Zoom link for our 5 o'clock meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yes.